Hey guys, I don't know how to start, but as a fan of horror stories, this is my attempt in bringing to light some bone-chilling horror stories for you to listen and enjoy. So, turn down the lights, lock the doors, and prepare for the journey into the unknown. This is where fear comes to life. For way too long now, I have held on to this story from a very dark time in my life, and it's been slowly eating away at my sanity. I recently haven't been able to sleep or eat with the weight of this memory on my mind. Therefore, I'm sharing it here as maybe some closure for myself. So long ago, in my college days, I was majoring in biology and genetic study. It was my outlet, and I loved it ever since I was a boy. The subject had captured my interest, and I spent my hot, sunny summer afternoons adding to my insect collection or catching small animals that inhabited my backyard. My hobby stuck with me throughout all of high school, which is when I met, well, let's call him Ralph. Ralph was one of the few people who found out about my unusual hobby. It turned out he was very interested in life sciences like me, and on that basis, we grew extremely close throughout high school. But while my interest lied more in the field of raising animals and building habitat for them, Ralph was slightly more sadistic. He enjoyed experimenting on animals, seeing how they respond to certain stimuli, how they adapt to a new environment, that sort of thing. But what he loved above all was crossbreeding. Ralph was trying to create some new cat breed from the strays he found in the neighborhood or breeding plants he found. Anyway, we ended up going to the same university where we majored both in biological engineering and that sort of thing. We moved into a nice two-bedroom house together where we shared our own homemade lab for our own studies. It was a great time. We spent hours a day in our lab experimenting and taking care of our many different specimens of insects, fish, rodents, and reptiles. Things were great until junior year during winter break when I started to see less and less of Ralph. Over the course of a week, he began to work on what he called a personal project in his room. He obsessed over this project, spending time from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. on this project. I was a little hurt that he didn't want to share this project with me, but he told me I wouldn't be interested, and that he had to do it for himself, and that it could change biology forever. I didn't worry about it too much. Ralph often took obsessive interest in some of his projects, but that changed drastically when one day I came home. I came inside after a long workout at gym, tired and beat, and ready to take a nap for the rest of the evening, and then spend the rest of the night playing video games or something. It was winter break, after all. I was walking to my room and passed by Ralph's room, which was cracked open. That was odd. It was usually locked or shut. I stared in the room and called for Ralph, but got no response. I felt stupid when I realized his car wasn't in the driveway. He must have had to go somewhere for the first time in almost 3 weeks. Anyway, my curiosity was flaring up inside me. I stepped into the room and almost tripped and fell over a thick biology textbook. I gasped when I looked up and saw dozens upon dozens of books piled around the room with hundreds of bookmarks sticking out of various places. I thought he must have been really studying for this, but then I turned on the light and saw GIS project. In the corner, it was all on top of a long desk. There was a mini freezer with various modifications on it, a tank filled with murky-looking white liquid that has various wires sprouting from it. 2 computers, each showing various data graphs, and assortment of cubes and containers of various substances, and lastly, dozens of files folders of information. I picked up one of the folders and examined it. The first paper inside of it said, Project Homunculus Log 1. I sat down and read the whole log. It's too long forgotten to write down verbatim, but the rundown was something about a modified embryo and an artificial womb. Completely dumbfounded by the terms he used, I didn't understand what he was doing until I saw the labels of containers, human sperm stem cells, assorted DNA, empty eggs, etc. The realization dawned on me as I looked at the tank. There, in the midst of this translucent liquid, was a small creature. Slowly drifting around now, I will try to describe the creature as best as I can remember. It was flesh-colored and textured. I could see tons of pulsating veins underneath the stickly skin. It had only one tiny eye and multiple little flagella like limbs on the side of his body. It floated around aimlessly, lazily, wiggling its flagella around. I was shocked. The shock I felt was something I can't even describe. I snapped out of my trance when I felt a clammy hand clasp my shoulders from behind. I whirled around and surprised to see Ralph's face looking back at me. I expected him to be angry, but he looked scared. Without a word, I pushed past him and ran out of the room. What I saw took a huge toll on me. I spent nearly 2 weeks in bed, barely eating, staring at the ceiling. Ralph hadn't spoken a word that entire time. One day, a good couple of days before school started back up, I remember he came into my room urging me to come with him. All he would say is, "I did it," over and over. When I entered the room, I had to stifle a scream. The creature had grown to a size of almost a house cat. Its tentacles had shrunken and instead gave way to almost reptilian limbs that sprouted from its fleshy body. It sat on the desk, idly watching me with one big eye that dominated most of its face. Ralph just grinned at me while I stood in shock. It was grotesque. I almost vomited at that moment. As I got closer, I saw something I don't think I'll ever forget for as long as I live. I saw the creature's eye. I saw intelligence, sentience. In fact, it seemed to be evaluating me. I turned on my heels full sprint and ran out of the room to my car and didn't stop till I was in my car. Without thinking, I just cranked it up and drove. Drove to my hometown, 2 hours away, where I stayed with my parents for a week. A week later, Ralph was found dead. The police only found a severed piece of his leg and a finger, and his destroyed lab. The police ruled it homicide, but never convicted anybody. I returned after the incident to clean out my old lab and gather my things so I could move out. As I was leaving with a stack of books, I found a file in the corner the police had apparently left behind. With tears in my eyes, I opened the file and read it. PH log number 34. The subject has experienced an unprecedented and exponential growth after switching from the protein water diet to a diet of insects and lab mice. PH log number 35. The subject has grown larger than 1 meter long. Testing and containment may become dangerous as subject shows to file behavior with random outbursts of rage. That was the last log. Whatever Ralph made that Christmas break escaped the house the day it killed him. I have moved on since then and managed to forget that part of my life. The only reason I am having this come to recent memory is because a couple of weeks ago I was walking along the street one evening when I saw a glint in the storm rain and almost had a heart attack when I saw one enormous intelligent eye staring back at me